Good evening, candidates, and welcome. Thank you for your participation this evening. Audience, this is the Big Bear City Community Services District. There are 4 candidates for 3 seats. Each seat is a 4-year term. Candidates will review quickly the timing so that you're familiar with it. We're going by the 1-minute rule. You've seen it now a couple times. So when you see the green card, that means 30 seconds is remaining. And when you see the yellow card, 10 seconds. And the red card is 1 minute has been reached. And of course, if you're still speaking after that, you will hear the lovely bell. Thank you. Introducing the candidates. From my left, candidate Dan Easterby, Realtor at Keller Williams. Candidate John Green, San Bernardino County Special District's Water and Sanitation Employee, Big Bear Area Regional Wastewater Agency Board Director, and Big Bear Fire Authority Board Director. Karen Oxandabor, Big Bear City Community Services District Board President. And incumbent Al Ziegler, Big Bear City Community Services District Board Director, and Big Bear Valley Recreation and Park District Commission Committee member. Thank you again for participating this evening. Let's begin with opening statements. Mr. Easterby, may we have your 1-minute opening statement?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up this evening and taking the time to be involved in the community. My name is Dan Easterby. I've been a full-time resident here 34 years. I came to the Valley in 1969 when my parents bought a little cabin on the North Shore. It was their vacation home. Just a humble little cabin in the Forestry District right behind St. Joe's. And I've been involved in my whole life has been memories of Big Bear. I'm currently a realtor in Big Bear Lake. I've been a realtor for 18 years. I've owned several businesses in the valley as well. The Fox Farm Auto Spa, I've owned that for 7 years. My 2 children, Dylan and Olivia, they both graduated from Big Bear High. I actually went to Big Bear High as well. And I'm taking the time to run for this seat just so I can be a little bit more involved in my community. The community has given so much to me that I want to be able to give back.
Thank you. Mr. Green, your 1-minute opening statement, please.
Thank you. I'm a 40-year resident of Big Bear, and I'm running for re-election for my 3rd term to the Big Bear City Community Service District Board of Directors, and also by extension to the Big Bear Fire Authority, Big Bear Area Regional Wastewater, and the Bear Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. I don't know why we need such long names. Over the last 8 years, I've served as president of the Big Bear City Community Service District Board of Directors, chairman of the board of the Big Bear Area Regional Wastewater Agency, chairman of the board of the Big Bear Fire Authority, and vice chair of the newly formed Big Bear Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, a joint agency of the Big Bear City CSD, Big Bear Lake DWP, MWD, BAR, and Barwood. We are working to keep 2.5 million gallons of treated wastewater a day here in the valley, to keep the lake full even in drought years, and for groundwater recharge, as well as several other benefits. As a utility provider, we must not be nearsighted and protect our infrastructure into the future. We need to continue the good work we have been doing and planning for the next 20, 40, 50 years and beyond. Thank you, Vote Green.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Ms. Oxandabor, your opening statement, please.
My name is Karen Oxandabor. I'm seeking re-election to the Big Bear City Community Services District. I've served on the board since 2011. Prior to that, I was employed by the district for almost 23 years. I have the knowledge and the understanding of how the district operates and what's critical to run it efficiently. That understanding is vital to our district as we face numerous important issues. Our state is undergoing a serious, important, unprecedented drought, and Big Bear Valley Water Sustainability Project is an urgent need for our valley. The consolidation of the fire service is an accomplishment I'm pleased to have been part of. Important decisions must be made to ensure continued access to emergency and medical fire service. My motivation to do in this position is to do everything I can to continue the stability of Big Bear Fire Authority.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Oxandabor. Mr. Ziegler, may we please have your opening statement?
Thank you very much. My name is Al Ziegler, as you know. Most of the people in the audience I do know. I have been up here in the valley for over 45 years. I have my beautiful wife in the audience and one of my daughters, one of 3. We've been here a long time as small business people. I've been very active in the CSD since 1974. I've attended a lot of the meetings and I'm very, very knowledgeable with the bulk of it. I presently sit on the Joint Powers Authority of your fire department, and also I'm chairman of the local county park district, which is a very, very difficult working with the county. Seems like we never win. I'm a strong believer that we need to keep the water on the hill. We need to put back in the lake. If that's what we need to do to cut down at least the evaporation of it. And to the last 10 seconds of my regime up here, I want to mention the fact that my 2 partners to my right and the other 2, we get along very, very well. We've made good decisions. We haven't had no lawsuits or anything like that. And I agree with my other 2 when it comes to the number of the subject they mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Thank you very much. Thank you for your opening statements. We'll proceed now with previously submitted questions, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Easterby. Making good decisions and having integrity are 2 important traits for any board member. Does your personal history reflect those qualities? Please give examples.
Well, I'd like to say I have examined those traits of integrity and making good decisions in my life. I made a great decision when I had my son and my daughter Olivia. I've had great decisions when I stayed in Big Bear and pursued my careers as an entrepreneur and a realtor and a business owner. I made good decisions when I voted for these 3 people on the board. I think integrity-wise, I've shown that in the history of my life. I'm very proud to be sitting on this board up here with these 3 other people. I think they've done a bang-up job running the CSD and being board members, and I'd be proud to be part of them, and I'm just glad to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Green, would you like to answer that question?
Yes. Integrity to me is saying what you mean and doing what you say. It's also doing the hard things and doing the things that may not be popular. Doing things that you know need to be done in order to create an agency that can move into the future and not go belly up. You also have to look at everything you're doing within each of the agencies, as I stated earlier. It's not just the CSD we're talking about. We're talking about the Fire Authority. We're talking about BAR. We're talking about the groundwater sustainability. I've got over 30 years experience working in the water and sanitation field. I have extensive training and certifications in all those areas. I have the highest level of California Water Environment Association certification you can get. All of this training, and it's constant training that I go through the county, it plays into my experience with what I do on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Would you like to answer that question? Okay.
Okay, integrity to me, I would have to quote one of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. I think you have to have strong moral principles, and it's not just what a person says, but what they do. I worked at the district for 23 years and then decided to go to run for the board because I cared so much about it and because I wanted to see it from both sides. And I have to be, that comes in my integrity and my being honest and doing what I said I was going to do is very important because I see it from both sides.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler, would you like to answer that question?
Well, I started attending the CSD back in the 80s full-time in the audience, and integrity is very, very important to me. Through those many years, I've seen a good board in the earlier years of my being up here, and then there was a few years that it was horrible. And prior to me coming on board, our folks sitting next to me, they settled a whole bunch of lawsuits in that back room. And so, because of the fact that those kind of things happen, integrity means a tremendous amount of making the right decisions. And fortunately, I have 4 other people sitting next to me that's very, very good. Each one of us have a different knowledge of different categories, and that is it.
Thank you. Mr. Green, will you have any known conflicts of interest by serving on this board? For example, do you own companies or land or represent others that may create a conflict of interest for you?
I'm a county worker, so my income's limited. My Form 700, which is your economic interest form you fill out every year, very easy to do, none of the above. I do the same form every year, so no, I don't. However, I do work for the county, and like I said, we're talking about several agencies. We're talking about the CSD. At Barwa, when I first started there, they had a policy where a county worker couldn't work there. They actually changed their bylaws because they wanted somebody with my experience on the board there. That being said, when the Friends of Fawnskin or the Fawnskin Homeowners Association petitioned Barwa to leave the CSA 53B, of which I work for, the county, I had to recuse myself. But that's not because of a conflict of personal interest, it's a work conflict.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that question, Ms. Alexander?
As Mr. Green said, I say none of the above on my conflict of interest form. It wasn't always the case. My husband and I owned a restaurant up here for years, and my conflict was that I couldn't hold the Christmas parties at my restaurant and charge the employees money because I couldn't make any things. But right now, I don't have any.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler, would you like to answer that question?
I have none whatsoever.
Thank you.
None whatsoever, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Alexander, if you acquire a seat on the board, what do you consider to be the most pressing issue?
Well, at this time, I think the water sustainability project is the most important. Keeping the wastewater in the valley, filling up the lake, that's critical. And second to that is our fire service and continuing to keep it funded so that we can continue to meet the emergencies or take care of them.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler, would you like to answer that question?
Well, the amount of water that goes down that back grade each and every day is absolutely ridiculous. And it's been going on for years and years. At one time, we were in a good position to do something about it, but then it started snowing and raining, so everybody said, why bother? Now look at the problem we have. So this particular subject is very, very important. And in regards to our people on the CSD board here, we're looking at it very serious, and we're making the proper recommendations.
Thank you. Mr. Easterby?
Yes, matter of fact, that was one of the reasons why I decided to run for the board, is I felt that this groundwater sustainability project is crucial to the future of our valley. I plan on being here a long time, and I know a lot of other people do too. And we rely on water 100% solely by our own means. And, without water, we don't have skiing, we don't have the tourism, we don't have the lake. We just don't have the environment to sustain this town without that. And it's very important that we keep going and move forward with this groundwater sustainability project. As Mr. Ziegler says, we lose, we can gain over 600 million gallons of water a year by bringing that water back into the valley. So that is the biggest concern, is making sure that everything that they've started, that this board has created, continues to move forward and into the future.
Thank you. Mr. Green, would you like to answer that question?
I would. I wish I had more in a minute. Yes, groundwater sustainability is the #1 hot topic right now. But like I said, we're dealing with a lot of different agencies. Each agency has important topics. At the CSD, we're working on an updated water master plan so that we're looking to the future and what we need to do with our infrastructure. what needs to be replaced, what the replacement schedule is. We're in the middle of doing retrofits for earthquakes on the water tanks right now. The last big earthquake, we actually lost a water tank to buckling. We got it back online in record time. At the fire department, we're looking at levels of service. As you know, Chief Willis has been out talking to the community. Once we establish what the community wants for a level of service, then we can ask for what we need to create that level of service. At Barwa, the groundwater sustainability, we're in a partnership we're working on with Bear Valley Electric for a solar field out at the power plant. We've made an excellent deal with them. We're going to lease the land to them because we don't want to become a power company, and we have a guaranteed low rate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ziegler,
Would you please repeat the question?
I haven't said it yet. Oh, I'm so sorry. Ms. Zandemar, did you want to address that question? We're good. I have another question for you. We talked about, you brought up the water sustainability project. What can you tell us about this project? What more can you tell us on the benefits therein? Ms. Zandemar, please.
Oh, okay. The water sustainability will increase the sustainability of our local water supply as well as maintain the lake levels. We need to recognize that retaining recycled water in the watershed for beneficial use would significantly keep the valuable water resource in this valley.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ziegler, would you like to address that question?
Well, being up here for 45 years and seeing what's been going on all these many, many years, there's been a lot of water go down to that alfalfa patch. And that water comes out of this ground. We have no other way of getting it. We never did sign up our forefathers to California Aqueduct, which they made a mistake there. Maybe they didn't. But the bottom line is what's in the making right now, and there's a lot of more things to be done. We need more ideas, more everything, but that water needs to stay here, period. No ands, no buts. And one of the good things about it, if it goes into Baker's Pond, you know, maybe we lose X amount of gallons per day when we got hot weather and the wind blows, and we lose an inch or so, but it would make a big difference. Whatever we do, we've got to do something.
Thank you. Mr. Easterby.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure.
please?
The water sustainability project, what can you tell us about this project and the benefits therein?
Well, this project's they've worked very hard. When I say they, I mean people at the MWD, CSD, multiple agencies. This has been a project for many, many years, and it's finally coming to fruition. I believe that, electricity, we can make electricity by solar. We can create that. We can't make water. We are wasting water by sending it down the hill, and by keeping it up here on the hill, we're able to help the MWD and assist them with the additional costs that they're spending on in lieu water payments for the water that does not go down the hill for the agreements that we made in the past. And like I said, you just can't make water. We have water. We need that water for the ski resorts and our lake and for the public economy, or the local economy.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Yes, it's important that we create as many partnerships as we can to make this happen. We partner with the ski area. We're going to be using their snowmaking line that they pump out of the lake during the summer months to pump our water up to the top, add some pipe to the top, run it over to Sand Canyon, then we'll have groundwater recharge. Currently, we're sending over 100 gallons a minute of fresh drinking water over to the stickleback ponds. It's a 3-spine stickleback prehistoric fish that's unique to Big Bear. Well, we have to supply 100 gallons a minute of drinking water to these fish. So we're going to send water over there. We're talking about maybe watering the parks. The water going into Baker Pond will fill there, percolate into the groundwater. Also, once it gets to a high enough level, then run into the lake. So the partnership and the benefits, the MWD, $1.5 million a year, they won't have to pay to buy water. The forestry down below the dam, the water benefits there. Also, we'll be doing 2.5 million gallons a day. On peak demand days, we can do up to 3.5 million gallons at Parwa, and that money will go to the Mojave Basin where they'll do groundwater recharge with it.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Ziegler.
Well, he took all my thunder. What John said is the same way I think, and I can't repeat everything he said because I already forgot, so I'm sorry.
I'm asking you a question, Mr. Ziegler. Several candidates have publicly stated that knowledge of the history of Big Bear is essential. We need leaders who look forward, not backward. Innovation and technology are the cornerstones of successful and cost-effective organizations. When have you personally promoted innovation and technology?
Well, I don't know if I understood the question perfectly, but I will say this. I've been on this hill for 45 years. I think I've been in every house in town. We ran a family business here through all these years, and the knowledge that I have brought forth to our board at CSD, each one of us with different occupations and different knowledge, it's paid off. That's why we've got a good CSD board.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question? Mr. Easterby.
I think we all use technology in our day-to-day lives every day. It changes us dramatically. Being a realtor or being in sales, you're continuously, staying in social media. You're integrating new software programs, customer retention programs. You're using software nowadays for all your bookkeeping needs. Technology just keeps getting better and better, makes life a little bit easier and easier, although it's a little bit more complex to learn at times, but I feel that we all use technology every day for the betterment of our businesses, our personal lifestyles, and our lives surrounding us.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Yes, as I said, I have extensive training and I'm constantly training. I go to trade fairs. I go to see the newest equipment, to see what the changes are in the equipment. At the CSD, we're experimenting with the auto loader trash trucks to see how they work on the lower areas. And if it works out, then it can be reduced staffing levels, cost savings. We've updated our bookkeeping software. The software we've updated everywhere, but more importantly, the industry changes so quickly that it's important to go to these conferences, because we're constantly going to educational conferences, trade fairs, vendor fairs, and looking at what the newest equipment is. The trash department had one recently, and Director Ziegler went to it just to see what was going on because he serves on that committee. So when you're serving on a specific committee, maybe you could narrow your focus on that department's needs.
Thank you. Ms. Alexander, would you like to address that?
Yes, I was a part of the upgrading of our billing system when I worked there. So I learned a lot about the technology at that time. But other than working on it, I think probably the best thing I ever did at CSD was help to hire the best IT person on the Hill. So he handles it all.
Thank you. Mr. Easterby, this next question will start with you. The CSD Fire Department and the Big Bear Lake Fire Protection District have combined operations with the intent to improve efficiency and save money. It is now apparent that the combined fire authority will soon need additional revenue, perhaps in the form of a tax measure, to continue with the current operations or to improve or expand service. Please provide us with your thoughts on that issue.
That's always been an issue in this valley. Back in 2010, Bill Young quoted a situation where they were talking about, combining Big Bear City and Big Bear Lake together, or another option was to hand off our resources to the county of San Bernardino, which is not a good thing to do. I think we should keep everything in-house. And if it means us combining our resources to come together as a community and be self-reliant and keep the sustainability of this valley going, I think if there needs to be tax increases to keep that going, to keep people health and safety, then it should be something that everybody should be involved in. think it's a good thing that the agencies came together, and I think it's a good thing that we have the Big Bear Fire Protection Agency.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Yes, I'll try to be brief. The thing we need to remember is, yes, the agencies came together to save money. And what we need to remember is, if the agencies were still apart, those costs would have increased even more than they were. Both agencies were having some difficulties financially because of the increasing costs of everything. Right now, we're talking about levels of service. We only run 2 firefighters and 2 paramedics out to an emergency. If it's a trauma incident, if it's a heart attack, if it's a stroke, minimum staffing required is 5 people. That means 2 engines in an ambulance. If that happens, then there's a shortage of service on the other end of the valley. And when the call comes from the ambulance in your neighborhood and nothing's available, it's because the staffing isn't adequate. That's one issue. Another issue is like service area up in the Moon Ridge corridor. It's so far out that the service time isn't within the 3-minute requirement. So this is why the costs are going up. It's service level, service level, service level.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Ms. Alexander?
I think I agree with everything that John said, and I think what the public needs to decide is the level of service they're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with it taking longer, if you're having a heart attack, you probably should think about that. It's the level you're comfortable with and what it costs to have that.
Thank you. Mr. Ziegler?
Myself, I'm one of the older members up here. My wife and I, we've had some experiences in the last couple of years where we've already we haven't had a cutback in our fire department. Just as there's so many people moving in here and such a tremendous amount of pressure on it, we've already have had hiccups in regards to service. We haven't really been able to give total service. Here in the last year or two, the amount of people pouring in here and what's going on, what we're doing, we're sitting and allowing the neighbors to tell us what do they want us to do. And so I would say, to speak in regard to all 10 of us, we're waiting for input from citizens. Let us know what you want us to do.
Thank you. Mr. Green, this question begins with you. What are your thoughts on the acquisition and closure of Bear City Park, and how may it affect surrounding properties?
Bear City Park wasn't recently closed. And we are talking about Bear City Park, correct? Long history there. Let's go all the way back, Meadow Park, pool, earthquake, money to fix the pool. Didn't want to fix the pool. Money was put to Bear City Park. Neil Derry came along. He had a fake grand opening for that park. That way he could say the park was open, even though it was already declared a roadway protection zone. Then that money was taken aside and wanted to be used for the zoo. At that point, then it went over to Paradise Park, because that park was going to be there. So that money has floated all around as a political hotball for years and years and years. The park didn't recently close. The park's been closed for many, many years because it's a runway protection zone. We're doing everything we can right now. As of last week, there was a change in management at the county, and I believe it's a change for the positive for us to get a park.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question?
I would like to make a couple of remarks.
Mr. Ziegler?
I happen to be the chairman on the county park. There's 7 of us. And actually what we are is 7 people. We have no power, no authority, no respect. For the first time, right this minute, there's a piece of property that something could be done about it right away. It can be purchased right away, a small park right away. There's over $400,000 that the 7 of us made very clear to the county it belonged to the city of Big Bear City. But unfortunately, the county moves so slow. But if they bought this small piece of property right this minute, they still have enough money left to give the families in the Bear City area a baby park. But it's very difficult where the 7 of us sit.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address? Yes, Mr. Easterby.
Yeah, the park has been closed for a long time, and I think it was a good thing that they closed that park due to safety reasons and due to the mandated safety zone for the airport. I believe that was brought up in last week's discussion when we had the airport board up here. It's a little frustrating to see that, you know, that the county had plans to do something with the park immediately afterwards, and nothing's been done. And I think it should be addressed that a park should be put in place in Big Bear City for our youth. We do have one in Sugarloaf, there is one in Irwin Lake, but another, or improve upon that, so we have after-school activities for the kids in our valley to keep them out of trouble and to create a better environment for our youth. I mean, our youth is suffering from a sense of entitlement right now that is very frustrating and it's worrisome.
Thank you. In the remaining time, oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Alexander.
Park is very important, and I would like to see one, but it is not within the CSD board members' jurisdiction to make any decisions on that.
Thank you very much. In our remaining time, that's the end of our previously submitted questions. In our remaining time, we want to get to at least a couple of our audience questions. This is to all candidates. We can start with you, Mr. Ziegler. Obviously, the east-west combining of efforts has been a boon to our fire and emergency services. Would you favor expanding further east-west mergers? And if so, how do you feel these could improve the quality of life for the entire valley? Mr. Ziegler.
I apologize to everybody in the audience because I'm a little hard of hearing and my neighbor here keeps telling me you gotta get a hearing aid.
I can repeat the
I
question.
got part of that.
I can repeat it.
Please.
The east-west combining of efforts has been a boon for our fire and emergency services. Would you favor expanding further east-west mergers? And if so, how do you feel these could improve the quality of life for the entire valley?
Well, where we sit today as a whole fire department in this valley, we cannot go back. What we've accomplished, we saved a lot of money through those years. Where we are is where we are. That whole fire department is intact. It's a fine organization, a fine group. You've got 10 of us sitting there that takes and overlooks everything. And fortunately, there's not too much we can do but to support the fire department we got now and do what it's going to take when it rolls around next June to what to do.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address that question? Mr. Green.
To be clear, when I say merging, I'm not saying incorporating Big Bear City into Big Bear Lake. When I think of merging, I think of what we're doing with the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. I think of what we do when Big Bear City may be short of water. We have tie lines between DWP and Big Bear City. I don't look at the resources we have as being Big Bear Lake's resources or Big Bear City's resources. The resources that are within the valley are the people of Big Bear Valley's resources. And in that sense, we need to be united. I'm very proud of how our agencies work together now. When 8 years ago, before I ran for the first time, that was not the case. There was this east-west mentality, and it was destructive to the valley. I don't want to see us go back that way again. We need to be unified when dealing with our resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Anyone else want to address that? Mr. Easterby.
I think it's very important that any member of any of the boards in the valley maintain this open-mindedness as far as what's best for the community. And I think we're finally gotten to that stage where it's no longer, you know, it's Big Bear City's thing, Big Bear Lake's thing. It's what's best for the valley. And I think we're seeing a great response to cohesiveness. And I just see the future being a lot brighter as people's mindsets change. And I think if people keep working as hard as they have been, I see nothing but good things.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to address that question?
I would like to just add a couple items. Number one, just recently we have a helicopter. It stays here. It's fully crewed 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And believe me, it has saved a few lives. We have a gentleman up there in Whispering Forest that squawks. He's only been up there 8 years, but the airport's been there since 1920. But in our family alone, in the last 2 years, thank God what just happened in the last 3 weeks with my wife, because without the fire department being at the top of Onyx to take over where I got her that far, and without the hospitals doing what they accomplished, and without that helicopter, she wouldn't be sitting in the audience today. So it's important that we take a good look where we are and keep on moving.
Thank you very much. Our last question here for tonight is directed to Mr. Green. After your last re-election, you sought to double directors' pay. You recently worked to double pay for fire authority directors, and pay for Barwood directors was increased on your watch as well. Will you seek to raise directors' pay at the CSD again?
Not currently. What happened there was it would been 20 years since the rate for stipends was set. And in that 20 years, the cost of ink has gone up, the cost of paper has gone up, the cost of fuel has gone up. These are all things that we spend out of our pocket in order to go to these meetings. It's not just board meetings, it's committee meetings, it's conferences, it's, and when you say double, yeah, it went from 100 to 200, so let's be realistic. That's not pay. When I have to take a day off from work for a meeting or a workshop, I'm losing a lot more than that. It does not make me whole by any means, and that does not cover all the time you spend doing the research, making the phone calls, and getting all your information together. You can easily spend 40 to 60 hours a week with all the committees and everything else going on and get paid for that 2 hours. So no, I don't feel bad about bringing it up to standard. As far as the fire department goes, they were at 100. My goal is to have all agencies the same across the valley.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Does anyone else want to address that?
I only get 150. I didn't know you got 200.
150. Okay, well, she said double. It threw me off.
Now might be a good time to go to closing statements. May we have your 1-minute closing statement? We'll start with Mr. Easterby.
Well, my closing statement this evening is, I've never held a public office in my life. I've never been elected to a board. I've never sat on a board. The only person I've ever had to hold accountable to is myself and my family and my friends, my customers and clients. So this is all new to me. I look forward, I decided to join the election due to the fact that I was concerned that a person that might come in and there was going to be an opening for the seats, that somebody would come in with their own agenda, somebody that would cause havoc and create anxiety amongst the other board members, and take this, derail the progress that's been done. I decided to join this just so I could bring a fresh take and my experiences in life and help move the CSD into the future with success and, again, cohesiveness. Thank you.
Mr. Green, your closing statement.
Real quick, didn't increase it by double. It was 100. 20 years later, we went up another 50. It's my belief that our employees at Big Bear City Community Service District, Barwood, and the Big Bear Fire Authority are our greatest asset and should be appreciated and treated as such. I am proud to have been part of the merger of the Big Bear Lake Fire Protection District and the Big Bear City Community Service District Fire Departments from the beginning planning to the completion of a unified Big Bear Fire Authority and bringing a permanently stationed life-saving helicopter to the valley. I am honored to have been endorsed by our 33rd District State Assemblyman J.R. Bernalty, as well as the Firefighters Association and the San Bernardino County GOP. I'm asking for your vote so we can continue with the important work we are doing at the CSD, the Fire Authority, Barwood, and the Groundwater Sustainability Agency to secure a responsible and sustainable infrastructure for our future. Thank you. Please vote green.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Ms. Alexander, your closing statement, please.
Let me assure everyone that I am much better at my job than I am public speaking. I would much rather have had a root canal tonight than this. But it's very important to me to continue on the board. I'm very dedicated to both Big Bear City Community Services District Board and the Barwood Board and the Fire Authority, and please vote for me.
Thank you. And Mr. Ziegler, may we have your 1-minute closing statement, please?
As a team that we've had in the past with CSD and what each one of us brought to the CSD and what we've accomplished in maintaining the the quality that we serve in that area. I'm very proud to do so. I would just like to add a couple things. Number one, I have worked on this park thing for 30 years. We were very close, but our Native Americans decided that the bulk of their tribe was buried on that property in Paradise, and we had to take it and live with what they told us. On the other side of the coin, in the long pull, we have very good neighbors to my west here that we serve with on the JPA, but I have no intentions to ever support the idea of Big Bear City and this whole area to the east being annexed to Big Bear Lake. In fact, we do not have the infrastructure, and that's one of the main reasons even the city doesn't even want us. So with that, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Audience, you just heard from 4 candidates vying for 3 seats on the board of the Big Bear City Community Services District. These are 4-year terms. Candidates, thank you so much for your participation. This concludes the forum. A big thank you to the audience for attending, to the candidates for your participation, to the Community Church of Big Bear for its hospitality, to the partnership of the Lighthouse Project. Many thanks to our chamber staff, ambassadors, and volunteers tonight. And the last thought I want to leave with you is Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote, which inspires me this election season. He said, "Go not where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path, and leave a trail." May the trail for each of us lead to our polling place on November 6th. We wish each candidate the best of luck in your endeavors. Good night and safe travels.